Hi everybody, it's nice to see you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We thought, as obviously this year is going to be very different and we won't be doing any, if any, reenacting this year, we thought we'd bring a little bit of it to you. So here I am in my kitchen, and today I'm going to be showing you how we make bread and churn the butter. So Lexi's here doing a bit of churning the butter for me, so she's going to be doing that. And I'm going to be showing you how to make the bread. So to start with, we've got the oven on the go already, so that's pretty much up to temperature now. And earlier I prepared some bread ready to go in the oven, so these little rolls here are looking rather nice. So what I'm going to do first, I'm just going to clear the ash out of the oven because it's up to temperature. So just bear with me a moment while I do this. So the fire's been in the oven for about an hour to an hour and a half, so I can get it up to temperature. Now what happens when it comes to the right temperature, the inside, the soot that forms from the fire will go white. It will burn off and all the inside will go white. So I'm just going to clean the oven because we don't want bits of ash in our bread. Right, so that's now clean. Now to check it's not too hot, I'm just going to throw a little bit of flour into the bottom of the oven. Now if it burns straight away, it's a little bit hot, so we'll just see. No, that's not too bad, so I'm just going to wipe that round again. Okay, now I'm going to put the first of our rolls in the oven. Now these are going to take about 10 minutes to cook. I'm just going to put 4 in to start with. So we put the door on, put the lid on to keep the heat in. So now that should take around about 10 minutes. So in the meantime, Lexi's still going with the butter there. She's doing a fantastic job. So right, what I'm going to talk about first is the grinding of the corn. So Lexi, if you want to jump down a moment. Okay. So obviously the wheat starts like this, where it comes out from the field. Just move that out of the way for a moment. Okay, so that's where it starts, and then it's processed, and we end up with this, which is our wheat grain. Now what we're going to do with this is we're going to pour it down the middle of the quernstone, like this. And then Lexi's going to start grinding it. So the idea is to do it slow and steady. Slow and steady. Gradually the wheat will work its way down through the stone and come out as flour around the edge. And then what we do is we collect all that up. Now it can take up to about 3 hours to grind enough wheat to make a single loaf of bread. So that's where the phrase the daily grind comes from. So Lexi is doing her daily grind there. So not everybody would have had their own cornstone at home. A lot of people would have had to have taken it to the mill, and they would have either been charged for that, or they would have had to have done some work for the Lord to pay for their grain to be ground. But I'm fortunate enough that I do have a quernstone, so I have 3 hours a day of grinding just to get a loaf of bread, enough to feed us. So once that's ground, it comes out as quite rough flour here. You can see quite a lot of bits in it. So that will be sieved. And it'll be sifted through about 3 or 4 times. Now the finest white flour at the bottom will be used to make the white bread for the Lord's table. And then depending on your status, you would either get the next down or the next down. Now, when you get to the bottom, you've got the peasants, and they will get all the rough stuff. And to make it up to make a loaf of bread, quite often they would add ground peas and ground broad beans, that have been dried, to make their bread. And this was called horse bread. So I'm going to just start making this bread now. So I've got my flour in a bowl already, and I'm going to add my sourdough. Now, to make sourdough, I make 50 grams of flour with 50 grams of water, 50 mils of water, and over the course of 5 days, I add the same amount each day. Now, to this, I'm adding some salt, and I'm going to use honey today to flavour our bread as well. So we're going to pop that in there. And then we add our warm water. Now, just a little bit at a time, and mixing it with your fingers. So you can see, is Lexi getting any corn out of there yet? Any flowers coming out? Doing a great job. There. So the sourdough I started 5 days ago. So for 5 days, I've been adding 50 grams of flour and 50 mils of water each day. You just leave it in an unsealed jar with a lid on, but not completely sealed, so natural yeast from the air can get in and to start the process. So now I need a bit more water in here. Now this is just warm water. It's not, don't want it too hot because it will kill the yeast off. Don't want it too cold because it will take too long to activate and to rise. And I'm getting a bit of a sticky dough here, so that's doing quite well. A little bit more water, I think. Just a splash. That's now all come together very nicely. Now what I'm going to do, because I can't really knead it in this bowl, so I'm going to transfer it to here. And this is the trug that we're going to use for kneading it. Now this takes about 10 minutes to do the first knead. So while we're doing this, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the bread itself. Now when the loaf comes out the oven, quite often, because it's been sitting where the fire's been, the bottom will be burnt. So what they used to do is they used to cut the bottom off the bread and use it as their plate. So that's what we call a trencher. So, and then what they do is they put their food on the top, their pottage, their meat, or whatever they're having, because all the juices would soak into the bottom of that bread. So then they'd eat that at the end of their meal as well, because servants and peasants obviously didn't always have the amount of food that the Lord would have. And hence the top bit of the bread, the upper crust, would be for the Lord, which is where we get the phrase upper crust from. How's the butter doing, Lexi? Can you finish the butter off for me?
Yeah.
There we go. Get that going. Because we need some nice fresh butter for our bread, don't we? So what I'll do, once this is, I've kneaded this for a while, I might not give it 10 minutes. I'm going to put it under the fire to rise. It's the best place for it, with enough warmth just to get the bread to rise a little bit. Now we're going to cover it with a damp cloth as well. There we go. We've got nice smooth Nice smooth dough there. Now I've used some wholemeal flour as well as white, so this isn't the rich person's bread. This is a sort of middling class bread. I'm going to cover that over and put it over there under the fire. Now I'm just going to have a quick look at our rolls in the oven, see how they're doing. It's a shame you can't smell it because they're smelling lovely. So let's see, let's have a look. How's the butter doing?
Good.
Good, let's have a look. So to turn the butter, a pint of double cream to make half a pound of butter. So it's a pint of cream to make about half a pound of butter. Now this is far off because the buttermilk I can feel now is coming out. It takes up to an hour to churn the butter. So if you think 3 hours to grind your bread, grain to make your bread, another hour to do your butter. Quite a lot of a woman's work was taken up just to provide for her children and her family, just in the cooking. Right, this is nearly done. That's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just take a bowl. Like that. Now I'm going to tip out the buttermilk. Now this I shall use to make some drop scones or something like that later. So nothing would go to waste. Can be added to the bread as well. Let's just pop that over there. And what we're left in the bottom here is our nice solid butter. So we're just going to get this out and put this into our bowl. There we go. Now it's very pale, this is. So what they would do, if they wanted yellower butter, they'd add a little bit of carrot juice to make it yellow. Now I'm going to squeeze this down into the pot because there's still quite a lot of buttermilk in here. Now I'm using a terracotta bowl here, which is glazed on the inside, but it's not on the outside. So what they would do is they could stand the pot in water, cold water, and it would keep the butter fresher for longer because it wouldn't soak through to the butter inside, but it would just keep the pot colder. We're nearly there now with all the buttermilk out of there. More still. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of salt to this just to give it a little bit more bit of flavour. There we go. Right, let's sprinkle some salt over that. And we're just going to mix that salt in now. Right, before I finish doing that, I just need to check the bread in the oven again. Lexi, could you just get me a plate out of the basket? I think they smell as though they're ready.
You need a napkin. Oh, yes.
Right, there we have our first batch of bread. And because the oven's still hot, I'm going to put another load in. Now I can probably get 2 firings, 2 lots of bread or rolls made in one heating of the oven. Now once the oven has cooled down and we've had the second lot of bread out, then I'll have to put the fire back into the oven and to heat it up again. Again, that'll take about an hour, and then I'm ready to cook the next lot of bread. So it's quite a time-consuming thing to do bread every day, to cook it and to prepare it. Now I'm just going to finish mixing this butter up. We're doing all right here. Now, I think these have actually done quite well. They're not too burnt on the bottom. So Some people would have had their own cow. For Lorraine, who's asking, I personally don't have my own cow, but a peasant would have somewhere in the region of about an acre would be what they'd have. So, you know, you think of peasants as being poor, but they weren't always really poor. They would quite often have a little bit of land, enough land to provide them with enough food for the year. So cows were kept, but pigs were kept as well. And sheep and goats for their milk as well. So there we are. That's our butter mixed up pretty well now. So we've got our buttermilk there, which we're going to use later for doing some drop scones, which I will be filming later. So have a look during the week, and there'll be some another little video up of making the drop scones. Now, the only thing left to do is to cut open one of these rolls, and let's have a look inside and see what they're like, see if they cook through. Let's have a look. Oh, that's pretty good, I'd say. Nice. What? Nice roll there.
Nice hot roll.
Okay. So, who'd like to try some? Oh, we need butter. We need a knife to spread out butter, don't we?
Yeah.
Perfect butter for spreading as well, not too hard. Oh, saying that I can't spread it. The roll's too hot. Not very neatly done, I'm afraid. So there you go. Is there any questions that anybody would like to ask? So that's it really for today. Some water in there. Quite often the bread would be. I used honey today to. Yes, it does smell as good as it tastes. You can't, obviously you can't smell it, but it really, the smell of bread here is just really wonderful. It's just the nice yeasty, good, yeah. Yes, my little helper, she's done very well. So yeah, sometimes they'd have used beer and for the yeast as well. I mean, I've used sourdough starter today, but they would have also used brewer's yeast. So they'd have used the scum that comes on the top of the beer when it's brewing. They'd have scraped that off the top, and they'd have used that to mix in with the bread to use for the yeast. So you get a nice sort of a beer sort of tasting bread as well for the sort of heavier rye breads. So what we've got hanging up in here, we've got a rabbit. Got a lovely rabbit.
Ducks.
We've got our ducks here. At the back, we've got a brace of French partridges, and we have our pheasants at the back there. Yeah, all going to be ready for to go in the pot. Right now, the bread oven. It wasn't common for people to have a bread oven in their own houses. Usually you would take to an oven in the village. Somebody would have one oven in the village, about the baker, obviously. And you would take your pies, you would take your bread, and they would cook it for you. Now, the bread oven we have here is on a cart. Now, this is typical of what would have been taken round the military camps. So the cart would be taken from camp to camp, and they'd cook their bread each day, and then it would move on to the next camp. So hope that answers your question. At the moment, I'm just experimenting with different wheat flours. This is just quite a fine ground wheat flour. But I will be doing experimenting with different flours. I have used spelt, and as far as I can remember, it worked very well. What are we grinding at the moment is just wheat, is just a normal wheat basic wheat grain. So I hope that answers your question. Any more? Right, if you were going to try to do this in your oven at home, I would say you'd need to cook it around about 160 to 180 degrees on a fan oven. That's what I would normally use. Now, the quantities I used today was 500 grams of flour, and I mixed a little bit of white with my whole grain flour, about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of salt, and about a tablespoon of honey I used in mine today. And then water, you just mix enough water in it just to get it to that nice consistency, so it's not too dry but it's not sticky. It just needs to be able to, when you need it, that it doesn't quite stick to the table. It's got to come off as you need it. And the sourdough would be about a cupful of sourdough. So that's the quantities I use. If anybody wants the quantities, I can pop them up later. So there we go. Is there any? Right, in the oven at the moment we're just using some offcuts of oak and some bits of bark and anything else that we've had around. We have got I can't think what we have. We have logs that we had delivered, which we've been chopping up. But it has to be chopped up really fine to go in the oven. You've got to build quite a fire, get quite a fire going. Not so much that the flames are coming out the top, but it's got to heat the whole of the inside of the oven and the actual fabric of the oven on the outside. And that's made with a mixture of straw and plaster, and it's got a nice clay liner. So yeah. But depending on whether you're using sourdough, sometimes the sourdough can take up to sort of 4 to 6 hours to rise, depending if you've got a good yeast going within it. This bread that I made earlier took a couple of hours. It was just a couple of hours, but I did have it in a warm place to rise. You don't need to be too hot. If it's too hot under the fire, it will start to cook on top. So it's just got to be warm, not too hot. So I'm just going to have a quick look in the oven to see if the rest is finished. They need a couple more minutes. The fire is starting to cool down now, so it's going to take just a little bit longer to finish those bread rolls off. So as far as I know, I haven't noticed the bread tasting differently, burning different materials in the oven. Perhaps I need to experiment with that a little bit more, David. So I'll let you know. Is there any more questions? What is my next demo? Right, next week. When is my next demo? Right. There should be a video going up probably midweek where I'm going to use the buttermilk to make some drop scones. So look out for that during the week, because I don't want to waste this buttermilk. But next Saturday at the same time, I'll be doing another demo, and it will be, providing I can get them, I will be doing stuffed trout in a salt dough in the fire. So if you want to come and see how we stuff a trout and cook it in the embers of a fire, come back next week. Really like to see you all again. So is there any more questions? No, that's it. Okay, well, thanks ever so much for everybody for joining us today. We've had a good time showing you what we do during the summer when we do our reenacting, and thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you next week. There we go. It's cooled down a bit. Lexi's going to sample now and tell me what you think. It's good, is it? It's good. Okay. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks for watching.